Hey everybody, I'm Tony Cadaspati from the Great Vocal Majority website, podcast, and YouTube channel. I wanted to make this video today. I know I haven't been around for a while. You know how life is. You get stuck doing other things. But anyway, I'm here today and I wanted to make this video because I wanted to give you a perspective about what's going on in the country right now with respect to all these riots and looting and the things that are going on. I want to give you a perspective that I think you probably haven't heard before. And I feel like I'm qualified to give this perspective because of my academic background. I do have a little bit of a background in politics as well. And I think after I explain it to you, I think it might make some sense. And you'll understand what is going on and from a perspective you probably haven't heard. So where do I begin on this? Well, where I don't begin is with the killing of George Floyd. I don't begin there. Where I begin is with the pandemic. Now, the reason why I begin with that is because the pandemic caused 40 million people to lose their jobs, and we're hoping that loss is just temporary. But 40 million people out of work is actually a lot more people affected by that. And what I mean by that is that those 40 million people support other people. A lot of them are family breadwinners of their families. And you can, I mean, I don't have any statistics to support what I'm about to say, but 40 million people out of work could mean 100 million or more people affected by those people being out of work because they're earning money for their families. So we're talking about a massive breakdown in the American economy. Yes, it wasn't a cyclical kind of business cycle downturn, but it doesn't matter because the virus has placed people on the unemployment line and basically driven lots of people into poverty, plus keeping them cooped up for a couple of months, which has a drain on people's emotional stability. And in the midst of that, just as we're beginning to come out of it, we have this incident where a policeman kills a person in a way that, I mean, I've never seen anything like it before, and I'm sure you haven't either. I mean, we've seen cases where the police have gone overboard, but I have never seen a video showing a policeman actually killing a man and doing it in a way where he just looked like, yeah, I can do it. I mean, it was like one of those kind of situations, very disturbing. But what am I laying out here for you? Well, essentially this. You have, with the virus, a set of social conditions that are basically a dream come true for left-wing radical Marxist revolutionaries. When Karl Marx was writing and making his observations about the future of capitalism and things like that, he posited that you would need to have the masses basically placed in a position of poverty and desperation such that they would be they would, in his idea, Marx's idea, was that they would spontaneously rise up and overthrow the power structure and completely destroy all the aspects of society, all of our institutions, the religious institutions, family institutions, businesses, government, everything, comprehensively destroy all those institutions and build up a much more collectivist kind of situation. I'm not going to get into too much Marxist theory, but that was generally what he thought. And of course, nothing like that happened. And that was in the like 1900 or 1800s. And Marx believed a couple of things that he observed and believed was that people would need to develop what he called a class consciousness. And in other words, they would be aware that they were being basically screwed by the powerful. And in our day and age, we don't think of class consciousness in the same way that Marx did. What we do, we see consciousness differently. We see consciousness in terms of what's known today as identity politics. So you have a series of aggrieved groups, people like, well, I mean, we know the racial groups, blacks, Hispanics, basically non-whites, and you have sexual orientation grievance groups, homosexuals, transsexuals, transvestites, bisexual, whatever. I mean, you know what I'm getting at here. That you have all of these aggrieved groups, and they're all opposing basically the power structure, which is essentially everybody else. And once you have those people, you have those conditions, you have the aggrieved groups over here, and then you have tens of millions of people driven into poverty. And then, once we're getting over this virus, you have political leaders who come from the left. They may not be Marxist revolutionaries, or maybe they are, but we know at least they're progressive Democrats that are refusing to reopen their states so that people could go back to work. And while they're withholding that and while they're holding back on those people coming back, those businesses restarting, these businesses are dying on the vine because small businesses, which employ about 80% or more in some cases, the people that are working, don't have the financial wherewithal to sit home and not work and not open their businesses up for customers. They just don't have it. And so what eventually happens is these businesses die. And by keeping people shut down longer, more businesses will die. And those people will be permanently, or at least until the economy is able to regenerate itself, will be in poverty. And you're going to have a lot more bankruptcies. You're basically creating a national ghetto. I mean, you're third worldizing the United States. So that's happening before somebody kills a black man on television. And then we have that. As we're coming out of it, as we're coming out of the virus, we have a black man being killed by a cop on national television, which causes not just black people to be outraged, which is obviously justified and understandable. Everybody. It was the first time that I've ever seen a situation like this happen where black people, white people, everybody people, all agreed this was an atrocity. And you would have thought that, well, thank God everybody agrees finally, so there won't be any strife over this. Well, that changed right away. And here's why it changed. Now, let me just say first what was similar to situations like this in the past. One of the things was similar is that you had people protesting. That's obvious. The other thing that was similar is that you had other people, mostly from either the same community or nearby, who decided that they wanted to loot, pillage, burn, and create chaos. That's happened on other occasions. It happened when Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson. It happened with in Baltimore, and it happened in other places. These things happened. But what was different this time is that something occurred that the minute I saw it, right away, my spidey senses went up. Because one of the things I learned when I studied communism in college was that one of the tactics that Lenin employed, Vladimir Lenin, one of the tactics he employed was he believed that the reason why up until the Russian Revolution that communist revolutions failed was because there was no vanguard. And by a vanguard, he meant a very tightly knit and well-organized group of people that will lead the revolution. Now, understand what they were doing. They're not building anything with a revolution. Their goal is to destroy everything. Their goal is to destroy the civil society, everything from top to bottom, and then rebuild it. You know, like the fundamental transformation of America. Do those words ring a bell? Okay. So what you had here was in every city, you had this tightly knit group. You know, during the day you'd have the peaceful protesters primarily, not entirely, but primarily. And then at night, you had some peaceful protesters, but you had this group of well-organized people that came equipped to do battle and create chaos and destroy things. And if you take a look at the video of the crowds at night, take a close look at them, what you'll find is it's mostly young people and mostly even college-age young people. You don't see a lot of people like in their 40s and 50s, although you may see some, but almost overwhelmingly you see very young people. And what you also notice is that, and it also has been reported, some of these people at night are wearing very high quality and expensive gas masks. And, you know, because now you have to wear face masks because of the coronavirus. Some of these people are coming to these protests at night with gas masks that will negate the effects of tear gas. So why would they be wearing that? Some are coming, and if you notice also something else, a lot of people you see at these protests, particularly at night, wearing backpacks. What are they wearing backpacks for? Are they carrying things in there like hammers or things to throw or something like that? The other thing you notice is that there's a lot of water bottles being thrown. And you wonder to yourself, where are all these water bottles coming from? Well, what we're finding out, and what's been reported but not very widely, is that in most of these cities, maybe in all of them, the protesters are setting up water stations. So there are like tables, presumably, or places where you go where you can get bottled water. And what's happening is that the protesters are getting their bottled water, and every now and then, if you watch the demonstrations on television, you'll see bottles of water going flying through the air at the police. So they're using bottled water as weapons to throw at the police. And this is happening all over the country. So the question is, where are they getting all this money? And where are they getting the money for the expensive gas masks? Where are they getting the money for the bottled water? And not only that, they have also very sophisticated communications gear that has been reported that some of them are wearing so that they can communicate with each other. So that's not cheap either. I mean, we're not talking about iPhones. We're talking about like the kind of gear that Secret Service would wear. these Antifa-type protesters that are causing all this trouble are wearing this stuff. This stuff is expensive. They got to be getting it from somewhere. I mean, maybe you want to believe that they put up a GoFundMe page or something like that, but I seriously doubt that. They're getting money from somewhere or someone. And that information is going to be had. But what they're doing is a very well understood Leninist tactic. Because I just wanted to point out that, people may say, well, what is their point? What are they trying to do? What they're trying to do is tear it down. I mean, if you go on Facebook and you go into certain of these groups, these debate groups on Facebook, you will see people, and I've seen people whose profiles show that they're former American military, saying that, quote, burn it down. So there are people from all stripes here, all kinds of parts of society, college kids, probably professors, former military. There's a lot of people that are involved in this. I don't think there are more people than the rest of us, but they're organized. And, this is the kind of thing that Saul Alinsky was trying to get people to do in order to drive change. And what you have now in a lot of these democratically run cities are politicians who don't want to upset people. So just a few minutes ago, I was watching the news, and President Trump is berating these governors and mayors and telling them that they're not being tough enough, and they're playing the politics game of saying, well, we were hoping that the president would be conciliatory. What's the president supposed to be conciliatory about exactly? I mean, everybody agrees about the killing. Nobody disagrees about that. So what's he being conciliatory over? I mean, what is he supposed to be doing that he's not doing? He wants to reestablish order. So that means there has to be an overwhelming presence of the law on the streets. So you have these progressive politicians in many of these cities sort of trying to play the game, trying to play along, in a way that's helping these revolutionaries. I don't know other way to describe them. And they need to be crushed, not stopped, crushed. Because what's happening here is they're looking to destroy as much as possible. Because eventually this is all going to settle down, folks. And then when it does, that's when the politics game is going to start. And they're going to point their finger at Trump, and they're going to blame him for everything. But he basically has nothing to do with it. But these governors, these mayors, all have the National Guard at their disposal. They are not using it. Why not? Their first order priority is protecting their constituents, and they're not doing it. And the more businesses that are destroyed, like you saw the other day, you saw that one was destroyed out in a Target out in Minneapolis. I mean, that store's never coming back. And what happens when you destroy all these businesses? All those people don't have jobs. There's a loss of jobs. There's a loss of income. There's a loss of tax revenue. There's a loss of a lot of things. And this is exactly what these Marxist revolutionaries want, because they want to destabilize the United States. That's their goal, and that's why they need to be crushed. And I don't know if you've gotten that kind of perspective on this, but it does make sense to me, because like I said, I've studied this stuff for 40 years now, and that's really what's going on. I hope I was able to shed some light. If you have any questions, or if you don't think I'm right, or you want to debate me on it, have at it. Just, write a, message or whatever, comment in the area below. All right? Thanks a lot, guys. See you soon.